Bauhaus didn't just play music, they helped create a movement, with sounds drenched in distortion, razor-sharp looks, and an unwavering presence that echoed through the goth and post-punk scene. Today we dive into the origins, history, and legacy of an influential band in alternative music, Bauhaus. In 1978, Northampton, England was in the midst of upheaval. Local businesses and historic architecture were torn down, replaced by large-scale commercial and residential developments. The landscape of Northampton was changing, and with it, 21-year-old Daniel Ash would decide it was time to start a new venture. Ash's previous band, The Craze, had come to an end, and it was time to recruit bandmates for his new project. He reached out to his school friend Peter Murphy for the role of frontman. Murphy, who had no vocalist or songwriting experience, but was an avid Bowie fan, and did have a quintessential factor: the look. Initially, Murphy expressed little interest, but after numerous conversations, he cautiously agreed. Ash, being a guitarist, then recruited previous member of The Craze Kevin Haskins on drums. Ash sought to have lead creative control in this new group, overlooking bass player David J., who also played in The Craze, in favor of someone who would simply play the bass lines that Ash wanted him to. Northampton local Chris Barber would fit the bill, the band now calling themselves SR. Under this moniker, the four-piece would create songs like Boys, Some Faces, and Shows, stylistically ranging from ska to glam, even power pop. After weeks of rehearsing, Ash would bump into bassist David J. around town. He raved about the new venture he had put together, extending an open invitation to David for viewing SR's next rehearsal. David J., although set to leave for Germany to entertain troops on US air bases, was vastly more enthused at the prospect of joining SR with his previous bandmates. Chris Barber was now being replaced by David J., becoming Bauhaus 1919. Bauhaus 1919 directly referenced the beginning year of the Staatliches Bauhaus, a German school which was revolutionary in the modernist art movement, architecture, and design. After only 6 weeks as a band, Bauhaus would enter Beck Studios in Wellingborough to record a demo. Highly influenced by the Stooges' record Raw Power, Bauhaus would experiment with distortion, feedback, echo, and delay effects on instruments to give them a more primitive feel. 5 tracks were recorded in this session, including a 9-minute powerhouse recorded in a single take by the name of Bela Lugosi's Dead. In the 1994 novel, Dark Entries, Bauhaus and Beyond, Murphy explained the premise behind the song. We've been talking about the erotic quality of vampire movies, even if they were the Hammer horror type. There was this conversation about the sexuality and eroticism of Dracula. Danny talked about his fascination with this and the occult connotations. So, we carried on that conversation and made it into a song. With a lead single on their hands, the band approached a slew of record labels in hopes of distribution. They were met with multiple denials, stating the track was non-commercial or that it was far too long, needing to be shortened to 3 minutes. After a barrage of refusals, Small Wonder Records agreed to release a single. The press copy showed 1919 entirely dropped off their name, becoming Bauhaus. Although never used to describe themselves, with the song's macabre references and cover image derived from 1926's The Sorrows of Satan, listeners christened Bauhaus with the Goth label. Unbeknownst to them, the song would become integral to the goth cultural movement and be solidified as one of the greatest songs ever created within the genre. The following month, the band would have their record featured on BBC Radio 1 by none other than the legendary radio presenter John Peel. Murphy recalled the session, stating, "We walked up to reception, passing Motorhead on their way out, and said, 'Hello, we're Bauhaus, and we're friends of John Peel. We'd like to go up, please.' In shock, they were allowed entry, putting their record in front of Peel himself. After the introduction, Peel said on air, 'We've got Bauhaus in the studio. They're from Northampton, and they have a new single out called Bela Lugosi's Dead. It's 9.5 minutes long, and this will probably be the first and last time I'll play this.' Peel's audience was captivated, with the lines at BBC Radio jamming from listeners requesting the song. Bauhaus became a rising success from a chance encounter. The band had hopes of touring during this wave of interest. Unfortunately, this was something Small Wonder couldn't support, leading to the two parting ways and the band signing with another British-based label, 4AD. On 4AD, they would release singles for Dark Entries, Terror Couple Kill Colonel, and a cover of T-Rex's Telegram Sam, in preparation for their first studio album, 1980's In the Flat Field. The album's iconic cover image, selected by their bassist David J., is a photograph titled Hommage to Puvis de Chevron by Dwayne Michaels. In the Flat Field encompasses broody, atmospheric, and rhythmic intensity, while also being a highly experimental fairing, housing dissonant screams, unorthodox percussion, surrealist lyrics, and Daniel Ash's distorted guitar being an absolute highlight in harnessing the atmosphere. Entrancing echoes in Double Dare and Stigmata Martyr, the eerie and minimal moments in Spy in the Cab. This was goth and post-punk depicted in a way that we hadn't heard prior. If we really think about it, post-punk was reaching a pinnacle moment, with albums like 154, Entertainment, Fear of Music, and Closer already on the scene. Post-punk was a rebellion against the excess of mainstream punk, focusing on atmosphere and more complex songwriting. Following In the Flat Field, Bauhaus would play 4 dates in the States, as well as 20 in England and Greater Europe to promote the album. Although raw and noisy in the best way possible, the band would later admit that In the Flat Field failed to capture everything that they had wanted, due to its intensity being too high. Deciding to direct their creativity into something more diverse, they released singles for Kick in the Eye and The Passion of Lovers, ultimately leading to their second studio album, Mask, in 1981. Featuring impressionistic drawings created by Ash on the front and back cover, Mask incorporates a far broader range, intertwining the dark atmosphere and post-punk a la Joy Division with the danceable sensibilities of Talking Heads and glam rock theatrical of Bowie. Songs like Kick in the Eye and In Fear of Fear have this danceable punk quality, catchy bass lines that lead you through an infectious brand of goth rock. Let's take a moment to not overlook David J's bass on the album, as it's the reason why so many tracks have such an addictive quality to them. Amidst the danceability, tracks like Hollow Hills and Mask slink around in the dark. The album retains its gothic qualities without feeling forced. Although unconventional, it's a testament that goth doesn't always have to be an overtly sad, depressive, and bleak affair. This album was accompanied with a music video for the title track, filmed at 3 a.m. in a Victorian shoe factory of their hometown. The video feels complementary to their sound, a ritualistic representation of Bauhaus in the style of expressionist art. With Mask released to the public, Bauhaus ventured on 16 tour dates in England and 13 dates in Europe for promotion of the album. Just 1 year later, their new single Spirit cited inspiration from a fifth member of the band, a spirit they felt occupied the stage, lifting them to a higher plane when they were all playing well. Similarly, I believe Black Sabbath's Tony Iommi spoke about the same thing. Spirit would mark a new era for Bauhaus, where creative directions would start to struggle. It was their first song not self-produced, instead leaving duties to Hugh Jones, who would work with notable acts such as Echo and the Bunnymen, The Sound, and later, Susie and the Banshees. The recording and mixing process took close to 9 days, something Bauhaus thought was far too long, as their completed albums were usually finished in around 2 to 3 weeks. The accompanying music video was originally set to feature a spirit depicted as a single dancer, with a white face mask and body paint. The spirit would come onto the stage while the band was performing. Lift Murphy, who would then don wings. Producers instead changed this to a spectral female figure, who instead walked through a theater while the band was performing alongside a crew of clowns and jugglers. Bauhaus disliked the final product as it didn't communicate their vision, self-funding efforts to refilm and re-edit the music video, as their label wouldn't provide the money to redo it. Unfortunately, this cut never made it to the hands of the media, leaving the original edit in circulation. After facing creative frustration with the production and music video for Spirit, Bauhaus expressed interest in self-producing their oncoming third album. Arguments ensued on the appropriate creative direction, ultimately hiring producer Derek Tompkins as an objective mediator. With very little material completed, Bauhaus set out to write, record, and produce the entirety of their next album at Rockfield Studios in just 30 days. Tompkins proved to be more of a hindrance, as conflict arose between the band, engineers, and Tompkins, unable to convey the proper perspective when deciphering lyrics or sound. As a product of this, their third studio album, 1982's The Sky's Gone Out, could feel a bit disjointed moving from its first to second half. The first half progresses in a familiar territory for Bauhaus. Their take on Brian Eno's Third Uncle is well executed, while Silent Hedges and In the Night sit in a goth sweet spot we know and love Bauhaus for. Swing the Heartache hits you with a semblance of trudging industrial. Its cold pulse seen as a welcome sound in the Bauhaus repertoire. It's to be noted that Daniel Ash reels back on the brazen, distorted guitar that was prevalent through In the Flat Field, instead opting for a subdued control in many tracks. The second half ramps in experimentation and psychedelic exploration. The Three Shadows trilogy branching into prog, goth, and art rock, as well as All We Ever Wanted Was Everything, a timeless folk classic that has only retained its merit throughout decades. The lyrics reflected the band's personal feelings during the recording process. According to David J. in his 2014 book, Who Killed Mr. Moonlight, evokes nostalgic memories of a time of innocence and naive yearning, emoting the bittersweet sentiment so perfectly, every word ringing true. Finally, the record closes with the experimental Exquisite Corpse, essentially being 5 different styles of songs wrapped into one. Exquisite Corpse originally referring to a French surrealist method, where a collection of words or images is assembled separately, each collaborator adding a composition in the sequence. Although Sky's Gone Out feels a little less cohesive than prior efforts, it still retains the quality of musicianship that fans have come to expect from the band. That same year, Bauhaus would record a cover of David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust during a BBC Live session. Ziggy was a response to critics who accused them of copying Bowie's sound. The song reached number 15 on the British charts and earned them an appearance on the hit British television show Top of the Pops. The Sky's Gone Out garnered the band their greatest commercial success yet, granting them an appearance in the 1983 erotic horror film The Hunger, starring Catherine Deneuve, Susan Sarandon, and most notably, David Bowie. In the film, they would perform a live version of Bela Lugosi's Dead. The final cut almost entirely focused on Murphy as the frontman. This led to landing Murphy a modeling gig and ad campaign for popular consumer electronics company Maxell, while also driving a wave of resentment among his bandmates. With press propelling Murphy as the focal point of Bauhaus, he admittedly became consumed by his own fame. The band felt overshadowed by Murphy's spotlight, despite Daniel Ash and David J. being the main creative forces behind Bauhaus both lyrically and sonically. The rift almost caused the band to break up on the spot, but in order to attain an advance from their label, they carried into the writing process for Bauhaus' next studio album. Before the writing and recording process could begin, Murphy unfortunately contracted viral pneumonia. Rather than waiting, the remaining members collectively agreed to move forward with the project while he was hospitalized, Ash and David J. taking the reins as lead vocal. Once Murphy had been released, he was presented with multiple tracks that were already completed without his creative input. Murphy, although heated by the ordeal, ultimately decided that he would trudge through the rest of the album as a collaborator. Their lead single, She's in Parties, would be accompanied with a music video directed by David Gard, who was also the creative direction behind the ad campaigns for Maxell. The video would then feature Murphy as a primary focal point, the rest of the band finding it to be in poor taste. In fact, if you watch the final cut of the video, you'll find shots where David, Daniel, and Kevin break the character of their stark and serious image, simply as a rebellion against Gard and Murphy. Murphy recalled this in a later interview, stating, "They were taking the piss out of me. I was blind to it." Burning from the Inside was released on July 15, 1983. The album's title came from an incident in which David J. and Daniel Ash were smoking hash in a car. The car then caught fire, burning from the inside. The album has more of a palatable appeal, but also suffers from being a bit disjointed. Tracks recorded without Murphy propel the divide internally, and starkly contrast those where the band supports each other. The weight of atmosphere is lifted from most selections, leaving room for something less dense. She's in Parties reels you in like an ethereal and dark dream. Progressing through the ominous folk of King Volcano, you are then welcomed into the eerie world of Who Killed Mr. Moonlight. David J. described this song as a surrealistic ballad inspired in part by the murder of John Lennon. The title track has to be my favorite on the album. We receive a taste of the sinister guitar Ash is known for, biting down and driving through 9.5 minutes of groove. The album ultimately functions the same way it was written, a mixture of contrasted direction. Created as a product of a band seemingly at ends with one another, Bauhaus would then embark on an international promotional tour for the album, with dates in Europe and the Far East. On July 5, 1983, the four would play a gig at the Hammersmith Palais in London. Following their set in an encore of Bela Lugosi's Dead, a black curtain dropped. David J. would then reappear. Picking up a light, he stepped to the mic and simply said the words, "Rest in peace." This marked the end of Bauhaus, the group disbanding before the actual release of Burning from the Inside. Now splintered, members would continue their careers in different directions. David J. would have a brief solo project with Renee Hockett, an 80-year-old artist and writer who was an original student of Bauhaus. Murphy worked with bassist Mick Karn of Japan in the band Dolly's Car, then branched into work with his solo career. Ash and Haskins would form Tones on Tail, with fellow Bauhaus roadie Glenn Camping, seeing commercial success with their single Go. David J. released 2 solo albums, collaborating with comic writer and spoken word artist Alan Moore. In 1985, the band had plans to reform and arranged a rehearsal. When Murphy failed the show, the three continued to rehearse and reignited the chemistry that they had had since their youth. This led to the formation of Love and Rockets, a name based on one of the first comic books in the alternative comics movement of the 1980s. Love and Rockets would stray away from the Goth label, focusing on psychedelic-tinged alternative rock. They released several highly acclaimed albums in the mid-80s, and even broke into the American scene with songs like No New Tale to Tell, a Temptations cover of Ball of Confusion, and the hit single So Alive. The career of Love and Rockets would prove to be fruitful, spanning 7 albums and 14 years before disbanding in 1999. Peter Murphy, although inexperienced in songwriting, would be somewhat of a late bloomer, ultimately finding his pen and refining his sound with albums like Deep and Cascade. The 90s brought a rising interest and more commercial availability to industrial and goth music. Bands like Nine Inch Nails, Ministry, and Marilyn Manson brought previously underground subcultures into the limelight. During this peak, Bauhaus would reunite for their 1998 Resurrection Tour, introducing an enthusiastic younger audience to the goth pioneers. The tour was an opportunity to premiere The Dogs of Vapour, a new song to their catalog, as well as the live album and tour video Gotham, containing a studio cover of the Dead Can Dance song, Severance. The band would fall back into their hiatus until their second reunion run in 2005, where they would play at the massive music festival Coachella, featuring an iconic performance of Murphy suspended upside down while performing the entirety of Bela Lugosi's Dead. 25 years following their last studio album release, Bauhaus would give us their 5th studio album, Go Away White. Recorded in just 2 weeks, the album primarily features initial takes that made it on the final pressing of the album. Unfortunately, Bauhaus as a collective were unable to refine the album, as an impasse arose during the recording. According to Haskins, the band was getting along really well for a period of time, but an incident occurred which made working together as a creative effort no longer possible. As a result, the band released the album with no promotional tour, announcing it would be their last and final record. Go Away White sees the return of Daniel Ash's distorted feedback guitar in a differing package. This Bauhaus feels more aligned with writing a traditional rock record, still heavily citing inspiration in the glam and alternative fairings of Bowie, on songs like International Bulletproof Talent. The second half of the album beckons closer to the Bauhaus of old, with The Dogs of Vapour, although released 10 years prior, being a highlight moment on the album. Splintering off again, the members of Bauhaus would focus on differing musical efforts moving forward, including Ash and Haskins forming Poptone, featuring Kevin's daughter Diva on the bass. In early August 2019, Peter Murphy sustained a heart attack, requiring 2 stents be placed in his right coronary artery. That same year, Bauhaus would announce a reunion show at the Hollywood Palladium, featuring all original members. After selling out quickly, 2 additional dates were added. In March of 2022, Bauhaus released their first new song in 14 years, with Drink the New Wine, recorded separately by all 4 members during the days of COVID. They employed the Exquisite corpse method, with each artist adding to the piece without hearing what the others had done prior. The results proved positive, as what came out was experimental and surreal, a stronger release for Bauhaus in the recent years. Drink the Wine marked the kickoff for a European and US tour. The band unfortunately wouldn't make it to the East Coast of the United States, with Murphy announcing that he was entering rehab. On the 19th of April 2023, Daniel Ash confirmed that the Bauhaus reunion had ended, and the remaining members sought to reform Love and Rockets. Murphy would then go on to release his first studio album in 11 years, with 2025's Silver Shade, planning a UK and European summer tour and the promotion of the album. He was then forced to cancel the dates due to ongoing health issues. Our thoughts go out to the health of Peter Murphy. Throughout their ups and downs, Bauhaus has had an unwavering lineup that has never changed. Their sound and experimentation in music still influence bands to this day, as we remember foundational and genre-breaking records that mark the revolution of goth and post-punk as we know it. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like, subscribe, or a comment on your thoughts. What do you think about Bauhaus, their direction, and what's your favorite album? This channel is devoted to the darker side of art and music, dropping new videos every Wednesday. With that, I hope to see you again soon. Stigma!